Hi guys, I want to talk to you really briefly about ethics. You have a really great chapter, so this video shouldn't be too long, but I want to go over some things that your book misses or kind of glides over that I think is important for this unit and for your career. Okay, so normally when we talk about ethics, we talk about ethical dilemmas, and the word dilemma implies that you don't know the right answer. So maybe you have two really good choices and you don't know which one's better, or you have two really bad choices and you don't know which one is worse. And we talk about ethics that way because often that's the case. It's not always obvious what you should do when it comes to ethics. And of course, ethics refer to doing the right thing, right? So if a person is ethical, they're doing the right thing. An ethical dilemma is not knowing which one's the right thing to do. Okay, your book talks about ways to weigh out which is the best ethical choice. So they talk about rights, justice, utility, and care, and that's a really good way to weigh the best option. But something else, another way to think about it is balancing your needs, your company's needs, the customer's needs, your coworkers' needs, and society's needs. So I used to use this other book, and it used to have a case study in it that I think illustrates this idea very clearly. So, for example, imagine that you are working at a nuclear power plant that's about to open. And the plant has been constructed. There's been lots of inspections. It just passed the final inspection today, and it's about to open tomorrow, but you're noticing a crack in the foundation, right? And so you have to wonder, did the inspector miss this crack? Did this crack appear after the inspector came? Or is this a crack the inspector saw and approved, right? On one hand, if you report the crack and there has to be another inspection, the whole thing's going to be delayed. You're probably going to lose your job. Your company's going to be out millions of dollars. On the other hand, if you don't report it, what happens if something is really wrong with the nuclear reactor, and what is that going to mean for the local town, right? So in this case, you're balancing your needs. I don't want to get fired. Your company's needs, they don't want the project to be delayed and they don't want to spend millions of dollars. Society's needs, like what happens if this nuclear power plant has a meltdown, right? So that's an example of a ethical dilemma and how difficult these choices can be. And things like, well, there was an inspection today, but am I going to be legally implicated if something bad happens? These kinds of things complicate the situation, and you have to try to decide what's the best choice here. Okay. Your job will often offer you a code of conduct, and a code of conduct is a set of rules that help you make decisions in ethical dilemmas. At FIU, you have signed one called the Student Code of Conduct, which says that you're not going to plagiarize, you're not going to cheat, so on and so forth. And in many workplaces, you have to sign a code of conduct, which will help you through some ethical dilemmas. Now, importantly, those are not legally enforceable. If you break a code of conduct, you're not going to go to jail or anything like that, but you can be fired. And often code of conducts will apply to your personal time. Not always, but sometimes. So, for example, in the state of Florida, teachers of like elementary and high school kids cannot post pictures of them drinking, like holding a red Solo cup or a bottle of beer, on their Instagram or Facebook. If you get caught posting a picture that clearly shows you drinking, you will get fired. Even though you're not drinking at school, you're not drinking in front of your students, they don't want pictures of you drinking, so that's a fireable offense. And so social media more and more gets implicated in codes of conduct. So you need to make sure when you get hired, wherever you get hired, if you get asked to sign a code of conduct, actually read it, because it could get you fired potentially if you don't follow it. It can also help you make decisions when dealing with customers. Now, when we talk about codes of conduct, we talk about it in terms of these big examples like a nuclear reactor or whatever. But a lot of times when we break ethical rules, it's in really small ways. So for example, let's say you're writing a report and you want to show how much money the company made, and you realize if you plug the numbers into a bar graph instead of a line graph, it looks like you made more money. Well, that is distorting the truth, which is unethical, okay? And people do this kind of thing all the time. And in the memo and letter unit, we talked about the legal implications of memos and letters, and this is where ethics comes in a lot too. If you are misleading your customers or your coworkers or your employees by distorting facts, omitting facts, or just outright lying, even sometimes in really small ways, that can have really huge implications. So you need to be careful with that. And of course, if the customer finds out, they can sue a lot of times for like false advertising and stuff like that. And then there's often legal implications. Every couple of years or so, you find out a company lied about something that affected the stock market, and now the SEC, the Security Exchange Commission, I think it stands for, the SEC, is now investigating, and that company is in legal trouble because they lied to investors about how much money they made in the last 3 months. That kind of thing happens, and it's not only unethical, but it could have legal implications. So you need to be careful about even small, like fudging the truth type things that you might do at work or might get asked to do at work. And now, importantly, I want to go over whistleblowing. So when you know that someone is breaking the law or doing something unethical, you can report them. Like my coworker, my boss, my company is breaking the law and I want to tell someone. We call that whistleblowing. However, unfortunately, whistleblowing is not necessarily 100% safe for you. For example, you could end up in jail if you broke the law before you decided to tell people that your company was breaking the law. And you can end up fired, of course, because your company doesn't want you to keep working for them after you told on them. And it could hurt your career. So, for example, if you work for the U.S. government, you find out the U.S. government is doing something they shouldn't do, and you tell American society, like, hey, the U.S. government's doing this thing they shouldn't do, everybody's going to thank you for telling them, but you're never going to work for the U.S. government again, and that's a career ender. But on the other hand, if you don't whistleblow, if you know they're doing something illegal and you don't tell on them when things happen and people start going to jail over it, you're going to be one of them. So that's an ethical dilemma that happens too. And so then that brings up my last point, which is that unfortunately in our society, what is ethical and what is legal do not always match 100%. So for example, if you saw someone drowning in a pool and you didn't help them, it's not illegal to not help someone who is drowning, right? And obviously it would be really unethical to watch someone drown and not help them. But that's not a place where the law overlaps. And sometimes when it comes to ethics, what is ethical is actually illegal. And then that makes it even more complicated. What happens when you want to save someone, but the way you're going to save them is illegal? What happens when the right choice is actually against the law? And so there's lots of things to weigh here when we're dealing with ethics. And again, like I said, I think the book's way of breaking it down between rights and justice and utility and care and all of that is really useful. Another way to think about it is weighing your needs, your company's needs, your customers' needs, your coworkers' needs, and then society's needs, and thinking about what is going to do the most good here, what is the most right. And there's going to be all these things that complicate that a lot of the time, and you have to make the right decision. So in this unit, you're going to start by working on some ethical dilemmas in the discussion, where you work through what's the right decision in this situation. And then for your major project for this unit, you're going to write an email where you're asked to do some things by your boss that are not necessarily ethical. So you need to weigh what is ethical to do here based on what your boss is asking you to do. And then the email part of it is delivering that information to your boss, to your superior, who has the power to fire you, that you don't want to do what she asked you to do. So that's the unit. It's not much longer, the unit. We'll go ahead and start another unit very soon. But I want us to spend a little bit of time on ethics and delivering bad news on emails, and this is a good way to combine the two of them. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, I'm here if you need me.